Next, from Chicago, we speak one-on-one with Bob Gallo of the AARP of Illinois. We'll hear his thoughts on the efforts at the national level to cut back on entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And we'll hear his thoughts on resolving the pension issues in Illinois. This runs about 30 minutes. Bob Gallo, State Director with AARP in Illinois, thank you for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Great to be here.
Last time we talked, the issue at hand was utilities, but we wanted to speak with you about some of the other issues that are going to be coming up now, certainly at the federal level. And AARP obviously represents a diverse group of people, but generally those obviously, what is the actual numbers, at 50 years old and older?
Actually, membership starts at age 50, and we have here in Illinois alone 1.7 million members and about 38 million members across the country.
And so let's go through some of the issues that are on the agenda that you think might be of particular interest to those who are falling into your area of expertise, the 50-year-old plus. One of the things that is going on, as people will well know, at the federal level, and came to the discussion on raising the debt ceiling this past summer, was the super committee in Congress that will be looking for how to cut spending at the federal level. The growth of entitlement spending is one of the main concerns. This is the area of the budget that kind of grows on automatic pilot, people say. That includes, often we use the term entitlement, and people don't know what that means. It often refers to programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and those programs that go for programs on a year-in, year-out basis as compared to the discretionary dollars that are decided upon every budget. How much are we going to spend on bridges or farming or transportation? Let's start with, I guess, the big one that often people associate with AARP is Social Security. Are you concerned about any particular aspect as the super committee would discuss Social Security retirement?
Well, we certainly don't think that, first of all, Social Security didn't cause the problem that we're facing now with the deficit or the debt. This is a system that people have paid into all their lives. It's a pay-as-you-go system, and Social Security is solvent for many years. Are there things that need to be looked at down the road? Of course, but when you're making these decisions in a very short period of time, this is a program that not only current individuals rely upon for a large, in many cases, 90% of their income when they've retired, and other individuals who are nearing retirement or might like to retire someday are going to rely on. So it takes a much longer conversation as to deciding what the long-term solvency issues are. The short-term issues are not a problem.
Anytime, and of course we have this conversation also in the context of electing a new president, so we're going to be hearing any number of discussions and ideas about what to do about these the entitlement programs, among other things. One of the discussions is that, well, first of all, I think every candidate lays out that it's not going to affect those who are currently getting recipients of Social Security, that the changes are going to affect people somewhere down the line. And probably I think the changes, depending upon whose plan you're looking at, might start at 50 and below or 45 and younger. But one of the ideas is to raise the retirement age. It's currently, for people my age, I'm 57 now, 67. It used to be 65. Is AARP on board or opposed to raising the retirement age? And if you're on board, what age would you peg the retirement age for?
We have I think there are some concerns there with raising the age that somebody's going to retire. I think we have to look at all the possible options that are going to be the fairest for everyone. You and I are individuals who might be able to work a longer period of time. Someone who might be in the construction trades and is using hard physical labor, to ask them to continue to do that work in their later years, it may not necessarily be practical, advisable, or possible for them. So I'm not so sure that the issue is really raising the retirement age. I think the issue is how do we continue to make this program sustainable at whatever age is the right age for retirement.
The problem, and it's been often discussed on different programs, but there's a variety of things that have led to the long-term insolvency of the Social Security system. Not that we're going to spend all our time just on this one program, but
Right.
people are living longer than when the program was established back in 1935, I
Sure.
believe. And also some of the earlier people didn't put as much money in to make it on an actuarial basis. As you've mentioned, it's a pay-as-you-go, so money coming into the system goes out to pay the retirees. There's not really a building up of wealth which can be drawn down. Are there any changes that AARP has looked at as a national organization? I mean, you're the state director, but that thinks this is what we think would make the program financially solvent.
Well, again, I think there are a number of different, possibilities out there and scenarios. Certainly looking at what's the appropriate retirement age now that people are living longer, which is really a great thing. We all want to live longer. And if I was to put this in a personal context with my parents, my father's parents died before they would have even been eligible for Social Security in that generation. He lived to the age of 80. He was a man who worked hard his entire life, put his kids through college and raised his family and didn't have a pension, and he survived mainly on that benefit. What a lot of people may not realize, because they're not fortunate enough to make a certain amount of money, is that if you get to a certain point within your earning for the year, and it's $106,000 approximately, once you've earned $106,000 within the year, you no longer contribute into the Social Security system out of your pay. So,
right. So they cap it.
So it's capped at $106,000. So, I guess there has to be a conversation about that. Is that fair? Is it someone who's making well over $106,000 a year, and there certainly are those individuals, shouldn't they continue to contribute into the program?
Before we move off Social Security and some of the other programs, one of the things that's also discussed is it's not means tested, and by that I mean that if you have no need for the program, if you're a multimillionaire, you still can collect Social Security. Would it be in AARP's idea a good idea or something worth discussing to have an economic means test?
Right. Right now because it is a contributive system, we're really pretty much opposed to that. But again, if a millionaire is only basically contributing at 10% of his or her income level, part of the solution for solvency would be to continue to contribute up until the amount of earnings that they have.
Let's move along. One of the other entitlements, and again, this is in the context of the super committee having to come up with, I think it's $1.4 trillion in cuts over a 10-year period, which some critics say really is not as much as they should be cutting, and that they'll actually have to have more cuts. So even after the super committee releases its report, there's still going to be ongoing discussions of what we should be doing to reform these entitlement programs. What about the program of Medicare, which is health care for the elderly, and Medicaid, which is health care for the indigent?
Right, and both of those programs are not enjoying the same solvency that Social Security is, and we all know that. And again, part of the reason is that people are living longer, so you get to access health benefits for a longer period of time. But there's also, we keep hearing about waste, fraud, and abuse, and we never seem to tackle that problem. But in the news recently, you keep hearing about some of that fraud that's being clamped down on. So that's part of the solution for solvency for those programs, to make sure that individuals can access the care that they need when they need it and who they need it from. And I don't think anyone's going to argue, well, I hope no one will argue that people can get medical attention that they need and even preventive care that they need. But some of the other areas is that the rise in medical costs over the years, has outstripped inflation, by double digits in many years. That just the fact that, we have sometimes have an inefficient medical system. Sometimes we, the costs of healthcare is rising so rapidly. That's putting pressure on the system as well, and there's the other area that's causing a problem with the economy right now is the amount of tax loopholes that we see out there as well. So I think we all know that we have a problem, we have an economic problem, but at the same time, Medicare and Medicaid is serves so many people well, and we need to look at what the solutions are for them, not ending programs that are vital to people's lives and well-being.
Have you, and I am not conversant with Congressman Paul Ryan, who's the House Budget Committee Chairman, representative from Wisconsin, but he came out with a plan on reforming entitlement. Has AARP looked at his plan and issued a decision on it one way or the other?
We're opposed to the Ryan plan, and essentially what it does is it would give individuals a voucher, right, at a fixed amount of money. So let's say that you need care, you're sick, or you have a disease, or something has happened, an injury. You have a voucher that's worth a certain amount of money, and you have to go find the care that you need and someone who will take care of you at the cost of that voucher. That doesn't solve the problem. That doesn't solve the problem with providing access to affordable care that someone needs in a general situation to keep their well-being, or to provide life-saving that provide life-saving interventions that are going to help individuals. What happens if a doctor doesn't want to accept the amount of money that you walk in the door with?
I think the Ryan people would say you're not going to, obviously if you're having a heart attack in the back of an ambulance, you're not going to be looking for who has the cheapest cardiac surgeon. But on the other hand, is there any argument for that kind of approach to say we're bringing market forces to bear if it's some aspect, perhaps just having a yearly checkup, you could price it around, and if one person's charging $200 and someone else charges $125, just like we buy tires, you might save some money, and across the system, I think they would argue that that's where the marketplace saves some money in healthcare delivery.
Yeah, I'd hate to be a victim to the marketplace when I need medical care. I think people rely upon their doctors providing the level of care and interventions that they need. Not that you have to shop around in the marketplace, or the market is going to decide which care you do get or which care you don't get.
As I understand it, there's a proposal in Illinois to called the Healthcare Exchange. I believe you've been involved in some of that conversation. So what can you tell us on that?
Well, that's an offshoot of what's called the Affordable Care Act, and what that's going to allow is, once the exchange is set up, is basically is a type of market-driven solution from the consumer side. This would be a place where those of us who are blessed with employee health care, or health care from other healthcare coverage from other sources, don't think about this. But if you lose your job and your COBRA payments run out, or you want to leave your job and start your own small business, try shopping for health care and see what it costs when you're not part of a large organization that can buy basically in bulk and negotiate the best prices. So what the exchange basically does is it provides access to individuals and small businesses and aggregates their purchasing power so that you can go into the exchange and be able to purchase with the same type of buying power that a larger organization would. And it also hopefully and is designed to bring more competition into the market, so more individuals or more healthcare companies, essentially insurance companies, will be able to compete.
When you talk about the availability then of small business people to go in together for healthcare savings, so that would apply just to Illinois, but be able to pool small businesses across the state?
Yes, it's Illinois small businesses and individuals will be able to access this entity called the exchange that the state would set up in order to essentially shop for the best price and the best coverage that works for them.
Where does that stand at this point? Is that still in the discussion stage?
It's still in this discussion stage, and at this point, I guess we're hoping in the next legislative session we'll see much advancement on that.
AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan. You're often not on, I mean, you're going to have differences with any number of groups from time to time, depending on what the issue is.
Sure.
Sometimes you're on odds with business groups. Where are business groups on this idea, the healthcare exchange?
Well, I think those who want to compete in the marketplace probably see it as an advantage. So I can't speak for any individual healthcare or insurance provider right now where I'm sure that they're going to probably want to participate in it. If it's a place where that they can get new customers and be able to provide the products that they're providing, then I would hope that they would want to participate in the exchanges as well.
As an aside, when you have various issues, the healthcare exchange, let's say, because the other ones we were talking about are federal issues, but when you're dealing with an issue specific to Illinois, whatever it might be, what's part of the process of you representing AARP and these over 1 million members? Do you typically, whatever the idea is, that's vary, but you typically
Right.
go out and, let's say with the health care exchange, you talk with the Illinois Medical Group, do you go to the Chamber of Commerce, to the governor's office? How does,
Well, you try to work with what we call coalition partners, whether it's business or nonprofit or government entities and agencies themselves. And the issue is going to depend on the age group of the individual as well. AARP membership starts at age 50. Someone who's 50 or 55 years old who's still trying to put some kids through college and take care of their parents at the same time are going to have different, and want to continue to be employed, are going to have a different issue than those who are over 65 and maybe in pure retirement type of situation and be concerned about entitlement benefits that are going to help them age with dignity and purpose. So there are so many different issues and nobody can agree on anything. Sometimes what we like to try to be is the convener, is to get individuals and groups to the table to discuss how can we solve a particular issue. We don't create legislation. We might ask for legislation on certain issues to be presented in whether it's Congress or in the General Assembly in Springfield, and at times we oppose legislation that we think is going to be harmful to individuals.
so when you say you don't create legislation, does AARP ever write legislation and an offer to a lawmaker to sponsor, or do you not take that approach?
As in anyone who does that thing called lobbying, we could offer assistance in writing legislation, but we're not here to write bills for the General Assembly. They have staff and individuals who do it themselves. Will we look at the legislation before it's actually put out for a vote and ask and give our opinion on whether we have concerns about it? Absolutely.
When we go through, and I know just my own say, any number of us have ideas on whatever it may be. Let's say gun control for the sake of discussion, that is more or less clean cut, I think, whatever side you're on. But I mean, a lot of these issues we talk about, fixing pensions, fixing such as Social Security or whatever, or the care exchange, these are complex issues. Hugely complex, and not as clear cut, and it seems to me that just by their nature they would need to have input, because no one group or no one individual is going to have all the insights to all these different facets that it takes to put together such a complex piece of legislation.
Like, there are all types of interests. There are business interests, there are political interests. Being a membership organization, what we're trying to represent and to be the voice of individuals whose lives are affected by public policy or legislation or law or changes to law. So, we do go out and ask our members via surveys and other mechanisms what their greatest concerns are, and that's what turns out to be the issues of our priority. It would be great if everyone agreed with everything, but that's just not realistic in life.
One of the things before the Illinois Channel, I did local news, and one of the issues I've covered was crimes against the elderly. As we sit here every week, we have baby boomers are coming, they're going to be retiring in greater and greater numbers as we go forward. On the crime aspect, often that's a financial crime. Is that something that AARP involves itself in? And if not, walk us through how do you as a member organization look at what issues you seek to champion and what issues are out there that need to be addressed?
The unfortunate part about taking advantage of people is there's always someone who has a new idea to figure out how they can. And so we also try to be a resource to our members. We have great publications that are part of being an AARP member that are sent to individuals, and they can access our website at aarp.org to better educate themselves. Sometimes older individuals are, particularly the very aged, tend to be very vulnerable. They can be isolated from family members. Someone comes along as if they're trying to provide a helping hand, and they're taken advantage of. And so we work with, the Attorney General's office to ensure that there are harder regulations, that if there are things that are new schemes that are coming up, to inform the public, and also to crack down on abuse of the elderly or scamming people out of their money.
The other aspect, I know, I kind of wonder, are we prepared in a number of ways for the retirement? And, we all like to visualize we're going to be out on the golf course or on the beach in retirement, but the reality is, too, any number of people are going to be going into nursing care and developing any number of illnesses where they need skilled care. Does AARP look at those infrastructure kind of things and say, in nursing homes in Illinois, do we have enough? Do we have the quality of care? To what extent are you, I guess I'm asking, proactive or
Sure.
reactive?
We're very proactive in ensuring that there's an area. The area you're talking about is long-term care.
Right.
What happens as our parents age? How do people get the care in the setting that they want to get their care in? We were very, very involved not this past legislative session, the one before, on getting sweeping reforms to nursing home laws. There were terrible abuses that were going on with the elderly in nursing homes, and those things had been ignored for a long time and finally were brought to the light of day. And individuals who are being placed in nursing homes because there are empty beds who should not have been in those nursing homes, who are abusing individuals who are defenseless. So on the other end of the spectrum, most of us want to live in the house or the setting that we're comfortable in. So sometimes what really needs to be provided is just minimal services, whether it's a home delivered meal or whether it's light cleaning services. We call that aging in place. And I think that the baby boom generation is starting to think about this differently. What type of setting do we want to live in? Many of us are dispersed from our family members. Not a long time I've lived in a number of different states. My family members live in different parts of the country. When one of the states that I lived in before was Florida, where you mentioned folks go to retire, and it's great in those so-called golden years, but when you're so far away from family and all of a sudden you need help and services and people don't know about those things, individuals start to get in trouble. So there need to be some new models of care. We're working on those where there's a lot of services that are available through what's called the area agencies on aging, where there are providers who can help individuals, what we call age in place, in the setting that they choose, which is mostly their home. And then the case of last resort is a nursing home, and a person has to go into a nursing home either temporarily or for a permanent situation. They need to be treated with the care that they need and with respect and dignity and a safe and caring, helpful environment.
And I mean, I know those can depend, they're going to vary like everything in price, but they can be hugely expensive.
Sure, absolutely. And that's one of the areas that Medicaid helps so many individuals who don't have the personal resources to be cared for in a nursing home, and that's why those programs are so vital, so that someone can be in a comfortable, safe setting.
As you look to this coming spring session in 2012, what legislatively are some of the things that you're going to be looking to champion, or we say, I should add for the viewers, we sometimes talk about offense or defense. If you're on offense, you're proposing some legislation or something
Sure.
you want to get passed, and as you mentioned, sometimes too, you're out there looking for someone else's bill that you think is going to be harming the constituents that
Right.
you represent.
Sure.
Let's talk about that. Offense, defense. To what extent are you constantly looking at what bills are out there that may be a bad bill in the mind of AARP, and to what extent do you propose legislation or try to support someone else's legislation?
Well, it just depends on the defensive line, so to speak. If there's you have to look at bills that are coming up and being posted every day or being considered. So it's a constant watch. We have professional staff based here in Chicago and Springfield who look at that every day during legislative session. And if it's something that we're particularly concerned about, then it's going and having a conversation, not just with the bill sponsor or the one who's put the bill forth, but all members of the General Assembly to share our concerns. And lobbying often gets a bad name, but in many cases, there's so much that comes in front of an elected official, and they have limited staff too. When we can look at a particular issue that we have expertise in and provide some insights and background on something, whether it's good and or bad, is very helpful.
We had mentioned we had talked already about the healthcare exchange, and we said that's kind of the talking stage. Would that be a bill that you would anticipate would be?
Well, we'd be looking at, there's already legislation that is passed and that Illinois is going to go forward with. We'd be looking at is how that's going to be implemented, and that's something that is yet to be seen.
On the other areas, going back to the federal level, to what extent is your office, when we're talking about something, and obviously it affects 50 different states and you run Illinois,
Right.
what is you as the head of a state organization, to what extent are you involved in those federal discussions? Do you go to AARP in Washington? Do you lobby Senator Durbin or any of the Illinois congressional delegation?
When asked to, we have a headquarters in Washington, D.C. with full-time staff who does in Congress looking at bills and legislation, the same thing that we do in all the state offices with my colleagues. Of course, members of Congress, they want to hear from folks back home. So we'll connect AARP members and AARP volunteers and staff and visit members of Congress, whether it's a U.S. Senator or a congressperson in their district office. There'll be times if it's important and there's something imminent, I'm going to be in Washington this week and next week, discussing, some of the concerns from back home as well.
Bob, earlier this year, I know the Illinois Channel was covering a press conference, and one of the issues that came up was had to do with the topic of the extension of unemployment. Of course, so many people are out of work and
Right.
concerned about having that cash flow. But it came out that there's something called the Social Security offset, and as I understand it, Illinois is only one of 2 states in the nation that have such a provision. What is it, and why is that a bad thing?
Well, here's what happens. Individual who's has retired and is collecting Social Security, in many cases it's their only source of income, almost impossible to live on Social Security alone in this economy, decides to go back to work. They get a job, not necessarily a high-paying job, but enough to help make ends meet. Through no fault of their own, and we're seeing this more and more in this economy with layoffs, they get laid off. Well, their employer has contributed into the unemployment insurance trust fund on their behalf, but what they're able to receive in unemployment insurance is offset by what they receive in Social Security. It's basically age discrimination. Illinois is as you mentioned, is only one of 2 states. The other is Louisiana that still does this. It's an arcane, it's still on the books. AARP has been trying to get it off the books for the last 10 years. In the last legislative session, we had about 40 co-sponsors on a bill in the House and about 20 in the Senate. But the bill never gets called, and it's never heard and never comes to a fair vote. That's one of those things we'll be working on in the 2012 session again going forward. It's time to end this age discrimination on the fact that just because you happen to be collecting Social Security, that you don't get a full benefit in unemployment insurance if you happen to be laid off.
Let me see if I just do a simple equation. So if I had $100 or $200 coming in benefits from unemployment insurance, but how does it work? How is that, and I made $200 from the job it's offset, or how does the dollars traded?
Basically, in most cases, your unemployment insurance is cut in half. In some cases, depending on how much you've earned in Social Security, you may not get anything. So it depends on the
And do we know
individual.
why Illinois is only one of 2 states? How long that's just been in?
There are a lot of things in Illinois that we don't know why. We've often heard of arcane legislation that stays on the books and never gets off. This is a really good example of it. And I can't think of others, but there's some good trivia questions out there. But this is certainly one that just isn't a law that's no longer enforced or ignored. This is one that actually harms individuals.
And of course, on the other hand, everyone knows that the state of Illinois is having extreme financial difficulties.
That's right.
There would be a cost, I guess, to the state by changing this.
Sure.
Is that, I'm sure that's part of the discussion and part of the aspect. Is it affordable to change at this point?
It's certainly not affordable for the individuals whose unemployment insurance is being offset, but the state pays for a lot of other things, and obviously the state is in a difficult position right now, and we're sensitive to that. But the bill is not being heard because of something called the agreed bill process, which is where the leadership gets together with labor and business before the session starts and decides what's going to be voted on and what's not. And this bill this legislation and this situation has never been able to get through that process. You know, it took us, it took us a while to figure that out. It's when, we have bipartisan support on changing this law, but it has not been able to get through with this so-called agreed bill process that is kind of works in the shadows a little bit.
I was going to say, you don't see that in the civic books on how a bill becomes law.
No, you don't. No,
It's,
you don't.
so it's kind of a wink and a nod that these are the things that we've sanctioned and the other pieces of legislation are not going to see the light of day.
Well, yeah, I think in some way you can understand maybe why something was created, a process to, okay, there's so much stuff and we only have so much time to look at so much legislation.
So it's a way of prioritizing,
I would say it is a way of prioritizing, but what happens when something has been going on for so long and it can never get a fair up or down vote on something and it's being held up by this particular process that isn't exactly what I would call transparent, where folks can listen to the conversations of what's going on and understand why something is cleared for a vote and why something isn't. There's a little breakdown in the democratic process there.
And just before we close out, tell us a little bit about Bob Gallo. How'd you get to be in this role?
You know, it's interesting. I worked for AARP, for a number of years in our Florida state office before coming here in another position, and also some interim positions heading our state offices in Maryland and Louisiana, incidentally, after the hurricanes. And you know, when you get at that level of the organization and seeing the voices that people, the voice that people need to represent them in many of these state houses and municipalities. It's not just a labor of love, but I call it the mirror test. When you get up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror and see what's, if you like what's looking back, you're doing the right thing. And you know, I've done a lot of other things in my life and my career, and this has been the best fit so far. It's a great opportunity to be involved in the issues of the day, and also to, as I said, provide a voice for individuals who don't really have the time to delve deeply into some of these issues and really understand whether it's good or bad for them.
All right, Bob Gallo, thank you for joining us on the Illinois Channel.
My pleasure.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.